everyone. Today we talked about watersheds. And right now you don't know what a watershed is, probably. That's okay. By the end of class, you will definitely know. So our warm-up question is under, it's under week 4, it's lesson 5 warm-up. The question is just, describe the journey of a raindrop from beginning to end. So narrate the story of a raindrop. Where does it start? Where does it end? So you get to decide what is the beginning and what is the end of a raindrop's life. That's totally up to you. If you don't know, a good beginning might be when the raindrop is still in the clouds. But like I said, you can choose any beginning and any end. And then please remember, I want to know what you think. So, use your own words and your own thoughts for this warm-up. Right, so that's under week 4. Lesson 5 warm-up, go ahead and do that. All right, and then after you're done with that, we can move on. So today's focus question is, how can we use a model to better understand our surroundings? And the learning target is, I will be able to use a model to describe how water collects in a watershed. The agenda, so we just did the warm-up, which was the life of a raindrop. Next, we're going to do an activity where we think about an analogy and then we do a demonstration. After that, we'll do a deep dive, so we'll do a little bit of discussion. And then lastly, we'll do our exit slip. So really quickly, before we talk about watersheds exactly, there's an analogy that I want you to think through. So looking at this picture, when the rain falls on the roof, where will the water land? So where are some possible locations the water that falls on this roof is going to end up? So go ahead and pause the video and think about that for a second. All right, and what was your thinking behind your answer? So what was your reasoning? Why did you say your answer? So some students point out that the water is going to fall on the roof, and then it might go in the gutter. It could fall off the roof. It could soak into the ground. It could land on these trees or these bushes. But one thing that we notice is that when the water lands on the roof, it's going to go down. And why is that? It's because of scientific principle called gravity. So water is always going to want to go to the lowest point that it can. And since this roof is slanted, the water is going to go along the slant down. All right, so it'll probably end up in this gutter system or on the ground. If we zoom out a little bit and we look at this house on a hill, where do we think the water will end up? And why do we think that? So same thing, the water is probably, now the lowest point that the water can reach is going to be the edges of these hills, down these hills. And again, that's because water wants to go to the lowest point that it can because of gravity. All right, if we zoom out one more time, and now we're going to think about this town on a mountainside. I think this is a town in Italy, but looking at this town, if rain falls in these mountains, where are some possible locations the water is going to end up? And again, what was your thinking behind your answer? So most students noted that some water is going to soak into the ground, and some water might go into the sewer system of this town. But most of the water is actually going to end up in this ocean or this lake. And that's just because this is the lowest point that the water can go. There's already water there, so we know that it's a low point. So the water is going to end up here because of gravity, again. So to introduce watersheds, we're actually going to watch a demonstration. Again, you don't know yet what a watershed is, but soon you will. And as you watch, some supplies that were needed for this demonstration were paper, a Sharpie, a blue marker, a spray bottle filled with blue water, and an aluminum tray. And Miss Chowdhury put together a demonstration video for us, and what she did was she used paper. She crumpled up a piece of paper, and then she drew some black lines at the top of the paper, the highest points. Those black lines represent ridge lines, which we'll talk about in a few moments. And then she felt where the low points, where the divots were in the paper, and she drew in the divots with blue marker. What she's going to do is she's going to spray water all over this model. And when she does that, where do you think the water is going to go? So pause this video for a little bit, make a prediction about where the water is going to go. It's okay if you're wrong. Predictions don't have to be right. They're just guesses. So where do you think the water is going to go? All right, now that you have a prediction, please go ahead and write it down somewhere. After we watch the demonstration video, I want you to think about whether your prediction was correct. So before we watch the demonstration, there are some vocabulary words that I just want to bring to your attention. Ms. Chowdhury is going to use all of these words in her demonstration video. So those words are ridgeline, topography, precipitation, tributary, watershed, basin, and groundwater. So right now, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to think about whether you know the meanings of any of these words. There are some words you definitely don't know, but there are probably some words that you've heard before. So I want you to just pause and consider the meaning of these words. All right, you should have paused the video and thought about these words, but if it turns out that you don't know any of these words, that's okay. We're going to take a closer look at them as we go through the demonstration video, and we will define them after the demonstration. So very quickly, let me show you how Ms. Chowdhury prepared for the demonstration. So
hey guys, Mrs. Abbott here.
This is not Ms. Chowdhury, but yeah, this is not Ms. Chowdhury, but these are the steps that Ms. Chowdhury followed.
I'm just going to show you the first step to the experiment. You should have your paper and you should have your brown marker. So what you're going to do first is you are going to crumble your paper. Okay, but you're not going to want to crumble it too much, okay, because you want it to have form and look like the landscape of the land. So don't crumble it all the way. Just put your hands on it and then kind of like start bringing your paper to the center, and then maybe pull it up from the center a little bit like that. And basically, you're creating, when you pull up like that with your hand and you're crumbling, you're creating like a mountain ridge. Okay, and you can crumble the other parts of your paper just a little bit, but not too much. You're just trying to create the landscape. Okay, like you see hills, you see valleys, and you see mountains, right? And you see the mountain.
So she talks for a while about this. We don't need to watch all of it. No, not this. Okay. And then I'm just going to show you the using marker.
It's right here. So your brown is the ridge. It's like this right here points on your model. So like the tops of the... So the ridges are like the highest points on your model. So like the tops of the mountains, like this right here. Okay, this is a ridge. So I'm going to trace the ridge. Okay, only the highest points, only the ridges. Okay, and you're going to do this with your brown marker. And you can like do it, try to do it kind of thick, because the thicker your marker, the better results you're going to get.
All right, so we don't need to watch all of this, but basically she just traces the ridge lines. Alrighty. And next she is going to okay. All right, so the most important thing to remember from the preparation video is that the paper is land, and all of the ridges, those are mountains. And everything between the ridges, those are kind of like little valleys or little divots. So now we're going to watch Ms. Chowdhury's demonstration. As you watch Ms. Chowdhury's demonstration, there is a short worksheet for you to fill out. It's on Google Classroom under week 4, and it's called, let me look it up. Okay, and it's called 9/15/2020 Watershed Demonstration Notes. So go ahead and fill that out as you watch this video.
All right, here we go. So I just did my model. From the top, it looks like this. Okay, and from the side, you can see all of the terrain. You can see the topography better. So as you can tell, wherever the lines are raised, when I crush my paper, wherever the lines are raised, I mark a black line, and wherever the lines are inside, like if there's like a dent, right? So over here, there's a dent inside the fold, right? So that it's like going in, it's going inward. I put a blue marker over there to designate where I think the water will land. All right, so I'm gonna start spraying the bottle with the color dye in it, and we can watch the water droplets, and we'll be able to see the water droplets because they'll be blue. Here we go. So this is modeling rain falling on a specific area of land, all right? I think that is good enough. All right, so as you can see, how many watersheds did we get here? All the water landed in this pool right here. That's 2, 3, and we'll count this whole thing as 3. Okay, this whole thing will count as 3 because this water up here will eventually end up down there because of gravity, and this is all connected. So that's 1, 2, 3, and we have a 4th watershed right here. And you can tell the ridge lines, you can see exactly where the ridge lines are that divide each watershed. You can count this as a mini watershed, right? But it's part of this bigger watershed right here. All of these rivulets, all of these tributaries, they all lead down to this watershed. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4 watersheds we have in this tray. I'll give you a look like this. So it looks like any mountain range with like a lake at the bottom, right? That's what it would look like. And if you can look underneath, some water landed over here too. Water landed underneath, it spilled through the paper. The paper mimics like the soil or the ground, and underneath it would be groundwater, right? That's where some of the groundwater would seep in.
All right. Great. So, sorry, I'm thinking about what I need to do here with you. Okay, so let's very quickly go through the answers for the water demonstration notes. Number 1 is what happens to the water as it begins to rain. The water will collect. It'll form streams and it'll go down into the into the lakes at the bottom of the mountains. Number 2, how do streams form? water collects into one place, and when there's enough water, it'll start to form streams because the divots in the ridges, the divots in the mountains can't support the water anymore. 3, how many streams form? Just one, several. I think you'll notice from the video that several streams formed. I think we counted once and there are 6 or 7 streams that formed. And the streams, where did the streams form? The streams form, let me show you.
All right, here we go. So,
all right,
and if
so the streams formed on either side of the mountains. Actually, yeah. So if the water fell on this side of the mountain, the water's going to go down this side of the mountain. If the water fell on this side of the mountain, it's going to go this way down the mountain. But the streams formed on the mountains as a way for the water to get down to the lake. All right, number 5, where does all the water end up after the rainstorm? All the water ends up in these lakes. Number 6, what caused the water to flow in a certain direction? Gravity. So gravity always forces the water to go down. Number 7, if this were a real watershed in Lowell, where would all the water end up at the conclusion of the experiment? All of the water in Lowell, if Lowell were a watershed, all the water would probably end up in the Ohio River. And then the Ohio River would take it away somewhere else. All right, so was your prediction correct? You probably predicted that the water would go to the lowest points of the model. And if you predicted that, then you were correct. All right, and we don't need to talk about these. Okay, so really quickly, we're going to go through the vocabulary that we introduced at the beginning of the demonstration. So the first one is ridgeline. So ridgeline is a border defining the watershed. So the ridgeline is the border between 2 watersheds. In Ms. Chowdhury's model, the ridgelines were all these black lines. They separate the watershed. So here's one watershed, here's another watershed, here's another, and then here's another. And they're all separated by these ridgelines. In this model, this is a model you haven't seen before, but in this model, the ridgelines are all of these dotted lines. The white dotted lines are ridgelines. Right? Number 2, topography. Topography is the shape of the surface of the land. So that's like how bumpy the land is or how high and low it is. So we can see we've got this model is pretty bumpy. There's some mountains, there's some valleys, pretty bumpy. Here again, we've got some bumps. We've got mountains up here. We've got valleys down here, lower points down there. Number 3 is precipitation. Precipitation is any form of water that falls on Earth from the sky. So that could be rain, snow, sleet, hail, any kind of water that falls from the sky. So in this model, that would be these rain clouds and this rain. In Ms. Chowdhury's model, it would be the water spraying bottle, the spray bottle. All right, 4, a tributary. A tributary is a river or stream that empties into a larger river or lake. So in this example, here is the main river. It's the biggest river, and it probably goes up this way. All of the little rivers that lead into the tributary, or all of the little rivers that lead into the main river are tributaries. So these are all tributaries, all these little rivers. Tributary, 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 tributary. They're all leading into the big river. Right? Watershed. Watershed is an area of land that collects all the water on its surface into one body of water. So a watershed is just a land that when that land gets rained on, all of that rain or all that snow, sleet, all that water is going to go to one place. So here, if water falls anywhere inside of these ridgelines right here, the water is all going to go to this lake. So this is one watershed. Here's another watershed. Any water that falls here going into this lake. Same here, and then same here. So here, everything within this dotted line is one watershed. Any rain that falls on these colored parts is going to go into this lake. Number 6, a basin. So a basin is a body of water where all of the water in a watershed collects into. So it's kind of another word for basin, actually another word for sink is a basin. So your bathroom sink is a basin because any water that falls in here is going to go to the drain. And so this drain is actually called the basin. Or that would be the basin. In this watershed, any water that falls is all going to wind up in this lake. That lake is the basin because it's kind of like the drain of the sink. If you look, it even kind of looks like a sink. Yeah, any water that falls here will end up in the basin. And number 7, groundwater. Groundwater is water that collects under the ground. So it's any water that absorbs into the ground. Which we saw when Ms. Chowdhury lifted up the water, there was water underneath this paper. That was groundwater. It had seeped into the ground. But we also have groundwater on this model. So you can see there are these arrows. Those are just showing where the groundwater goes. The cool thing about groundwater is even after water enters the ground, seeps into the ground, it still flows to the basin. So the water is still going to move to this lake, even underground. If it doesn't get absorbed by the tree's roots or any other plants, it's going to go to the basin, which is kind of cool. So that's groundwater. All right, so you just learned these 7 words, and now you're going to use them in your exit slip. So the exit slip says, looking at the model of this watershed, describe how water from the rain clouds arrives to the lake. Use all of the following words in your answer. So the words are basin, groundwater, lake, precipitation, ridgeline, river, stream, tributary, and watershed. As you do this exit slip, please write in complete sentences so that I understand what you're thinking. And please use your own words and your own thoughts. I don't need to know what Google knows. I need to know what you know. So make sure that you use all of these words. Number 2 has all of these words listed out. You can check the words as you use them, right? And the way that you might start your answer for this exit slip is saying something like, first, precipitation falls from the clouds. And if it falls on one side of the ridge line, it will form streams, which are tributaries for rivers, blah, 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 blah. All right, make sure you're using all of the words and try to have a narration. So try to tell me the whole process, right? That is all that we did today. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I will get back to you.